have a book review for you guys today. I just realized my lipstick looks really weird because I ate and I didn't reapply it. Whatever, we're going to ignore that.
You are incredibly impatient, and you're using my phone.
That's because River has mine. Alex is going to be joining me because he recommended this book to me. This is Dune by Frank Herbert, and it is book 1 in the Dune series. Put your arm up. There we go. Okay, there. Now you can see both of us. Stop. Can you turn off that light?
I can.
Please?
Ow.
Okay, so also, one of my favorite YouTubers, Books with Emily, Emily Fox, she has 2 channels, but the one relevant here is Books with Emily Fox. She, did this for her book club one month, and she didn't like it. I give this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a classic sci-fi, far future. I would say it has, it's written in a way that if you enjoy really thorough fantasy with like world building and stuff, you'd probably enjoy this too. It's just really good. I really liked it. It's the kind of world that I get into it and I want to read history books. Like, I want to be able to go into the book and find their history books and bring them back and read them.
I guess I should get you the encyclopedia.
Like, I read most of the appendices that were in this. Okay, let's see. Emily Fox didn't really like it, but I liked it a lot. I think it's because she's really into sci-fi, and this, like I said, does read kind of like fantasy to me.
It's because it's soft sci-fi.
I noticed one person on Goodreads mentioned that it's way too political for them. I don't really like books with a lot of politics, and I mean, this, yeah, it was thoroughly saturated with all of the politics and stuff, and it did switch perspectives a few times, but
the politics in it are really simplistic, though. It's feudal politics.
Like, I was reading it and I knew it was talking about the politics, but I didn't think about it. Like, it was just there. So it didn't bother me, even though I don't really like politics in books.
It's very well developed and it's interwoven under the story. It's indispensable from it. But it is so far removed from what we deal with on a daily basis as to not be that much of a distraction unless you just have a severe phobia of politics. I mean, there's some stuff in there that could be taken in a political sense now. The only homosexual character was a villain, and
yeah, that was Christopher Paolini, who wrote The Inheritance Cycle. I noticed his review on Goodreads, and that was one thing he'd mention.
Oh, that came out in 1972? I mean, that was...
It was like in the 60s. It came out in the 60s. It was first published in 1965.
Oh, wow, I'm way off. But yeah, it was a very different climate then.
Yeah.
And, yeah, there were definitely writers coming out and challenging that, but that was still in a lot of ways just telling a publisher, hey, don't publish this.
The other thing Paolini said that I liked and that I agree with is that he implied as much, if not more, than he told you about the world.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Alex and I were talking about, like, what color, because it never says what color the spice is. We were talking about what color we both imagined it as. And there was one movie, apparently...
The Sci-Fi Channel miniseries.
That had it as green.
Yeah, it was like a greenish color, kind of like the generic Italian seasoning spice, or whatever you can get at most supermarkets.
And my first thought is...
Here we go.
Okay, if you don't want to hear this, I'll see you all next time. My first thought is, it can't be green. And Alex is like, well, why can't it? It doesn't say. And I'm like, well, this is why. And I had a complete logical argument immediately, because I did just finish it.
It's not way too hard about it.
I didn't think that hard about it. It was just logical and immediately there in the forefront of my head when you mentioned that it was green, and that is wrong, because it cannot be green. It is illogical.
Fine, it's purple. I saw it as red like paprika. And it being described as smelling like cinnamon certainly colored my thought process, and I did not mean for that to be
Purple I
pun.
dislike, but it is logical, mostly.
It's either that or dark blue.
That is actually quite logical.
I guess so. It's been a while since I've read it. I read it when I was in high school, and
But he's been pestering me to read it for 5 years
yeah, it's a book
plus.
that's really stuck with me. It's a very, very good book.
Yeah, and I mean, I know I gave it 4 stars, not five, but it'll stick with me too. I did really enjoy it. Don't get me wrong, I'm just teasing him over here.
Mm.
Um,
Now, when I say it's soft sci-fi, it's because the technology in it isn't. It's not a focus. It's not important. It's just more a means to an end 90% of the time. You've got really cool stuff like still suits, and you've got the Holtzman effect. You've got personal shields. You've got laser guns. You've got faster than light travel by way of space warping, but it doesn't, or space folding, excuse me, but it doesn't really go into the detail of it, like say um, Pornell and Niven did in The Mote in God's Eye, where it was very much a part of what the characters were experiencing when they were just traveling from point A to point B with their was it Alcubierre drive. It doesn't really matter that much, so it does read more in science fantasy, but not quite as much as say Star Wars, for instance. But you know, when it comes down to it, when you've got a book and you've got a story, the most important thing are always the characters. And Herbert chose to focus more on the characters and the arc, and the arc he had for Paul is one of the best hero arcs, one of the best coming of age and revenge arcs I've read in a book. And I
that's another thing. I want to go into this world to one of their libraries and get a nonfiction comprehensive book about the Bene Gesserit.
you could get one like the Orange Catholic Bible. Did you like that part? Did you
Oh,
like the
that looks
description?
cool.
Yeah, that's like it's my favorite. Going back to the technology in it, it's my favorite device in it. The little compact Bible that's got the microfilament pages and like the pop out magnifying glass so you can read it because the pages are so tiny, but you have to use a special page turner because if you touch them, you'll destroy them. Oh, so cool.
So, overall, yes, I really enjoyed this. I would recommend at least checking it out. It seems to be one of those books that people either love or really don't love. It doesn't seem like people actively hate it, but like they either really like it or really don't like it. So, I would recommend at least trying it out. I am slightly mad at it because it was so good and the world building was so thorough that I couldn't put this like if I put this down and tried to read another book, it would mess me up and I would have to think about the world building again.
Yeah.
So I couldn't properly really read anything else while I was reading this. And I mean, it's almost 500 pages, which isn't that long for me, but I was primarily reading this at work, which means snippets here, snippets there. So this took me like weeks. And I've had library books that I'm like, I want to read you, but I can't read you right now. So I'm slightly mad at it for that, but otherwise it was great. Um, do you have anything else to add?
There have been two cinematic interpretations of it. There's a movie from the 80s, I think it's 82 or 83, but we know how good my dating is now. It's got Kyle MacLachlan in the lead. It's directed by David Lynch. Patrick Stewart, Jurgen Prochnow, Max von Sydow, they're all in it. And Sting is in it for some reason. I've seen costumes from it. I've seen the still suits they used. I've seen the animatronic sets they used for the sandworm scenes. They're all at the Seattle Sci-Fi Museum. It's really cool. Check it out if you like the movie. But the movie, I personally abhor. It's really bad. It's just the height of 80s corniness, and you can ask her, I really like 80s music and a lot of 80s movies. But then there's the Sci Fi Channel miniseries adaptation, and although it gets a lot more right, it's still just not good. And there's some new movie coming out.
There is?
Yeah, that I told you about it. Or they've got at least Paul cast, but I don't really care. But there have been really good video game adaptations of it. The original one on PC is the classic adventure game. Dune 2 is one of the first real time strategy games. From that came Dune 2000 and Emperor Battle for Dune. Those are both really good. There was a game that came out around the same time as the miniseries called Frank Herbert's Dune. It's awful. But the ones before that are really, really good. If you really want to get more into the universe and you like video games, that's a really accessible way of doing it. The people who worked on that loved this book, and it really shows through. So that's basically all I've got to say.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. Have you guys read this? Do you want to? What did you think? I'm sure some of you have read this and have opinions. So let us know questions, comments, opinions down below. If you have specific questions, comments, or opinions for Alex, let us know that too, and I'll make sure he responds to them. Otherwise, yes, you will, and you've done it before. Otherwise, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.
There's my kiss.